I was halfway through my morning coffee when my doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, each chime more aggressive than the last. Opening the front door of my modest ranch house in Scottsdale, Arizona, I found myself face to face with a woman who looked like she'd been waiting her entire life for this exact moment of confrontation. Her blonde hair was cut in that distinctive suburban style that practically screamed middle management, and she clutched a leather-bound planner against her chest, like it was some kind of holy text. "You must be Derek Mason," she said, not waiting for confirmation. "I'm Patricia Henderson, president of the Saguaro Vista Homeowners Association, and we need to discuss your flagrant violation of community regulations immediately." I blinked, still processing the ambush. It was barely 8 in the morning on a Saturday. "I'm sorry, what violation?" Patricia's eyes narrowed as she consulted her planner with theatrical precision. "Your illegal short-term rental operation. We've documented 17 separate instances of different vehicles in your driveway over the past 2 months, clear evidence of Airbnb activity. According to Section 4.7 of our HOA covenants, conditions and restrictions, short-term rentals are strictly prohibited. You owe the association $3,000 in accumulated fines, plus 20% of all rental income generated from this property." I actually laughed, which was apparently the wrong response based on how Patricia's face turned an impressive shade of crimson. "There's been some kind of mistake. I don't run an Airbnb. I don't even have an Airbnb listing." "Don't insult my intelligence, Mr. Mason," Patricia snapped, flipping through her planner and producing a printed photograph. "We have photographic evidence. Different cars, different people, clearly guests coming and going at all hours." I looked at the photo, which showed a silver Honda Civic in my driveway. I recognized it immediately. "That's my sister's car. She visits from Temp." "And this one," Patricia thrust another photo at me, showing a red pickup truck. "My friend Jake. He comes over to watch football." Patricia's expression suggested she didn't believe a word. "Mr. Mason, I've been monitoring short-term rental activity in this neighborhood for 6 months. I know an illegal operation when I see one. You have 72 hours to cease all rental activities and submit payment for the fines, or we'll be forced to place a lien on your property." "I'm telling you, you've got the wrong person," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I work from home as a software developer. Those are just friends and family visiting. This is completely absurd." "The HOA board doesn't make mistakes," Patricia said with absolute certainty. "We'll be expecting your payment by Tuesday at 5 p.m. Have a blessed day." She turned on her heel and marched back down my walkway, leaving me standing in the doorway holding my coffee and wondering if I'd just hallucinated the entire conversation. I closed the door and immediately pulled out my phone to call my sister. "Emily, weird question," I said when she answered. "How many times have you visited me in the past 2 months?" "I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 times. Why?" "The HOA president just accused me of running an Airbnb because different cars keep showing up at my house." Emily burst out laughing. "Are you serious?" "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. She wants $3,000 in fines plus 20% of my non-existent Airbnb income. Can she even do that?" "I have no idea, but she threatened to put a lien on my house." After hanging up with Emily, I spent the next hour researching Arizona HOA laws and reading through the covenant documents I'd signed when I bought the house 3 years ago. Sure enough, there was a clause prohibiting short-term rentals of less than 30 days. But that didn't matter because I wasn't doing any rentals at all. The problem was proving a negative. How do you prove you're not doing something? By Monday morning, I'd received a formal letter from the HOA via certified mail. It reiterated the accusations and included a detailed breakdown of the alleged violations, complete with dates, times, and descriptions of vehicles. Reading through it, I realized Patricia had been watching my house like a hawk. Every friend who'd stopped by, every family visit, every pizza delivery had been documented and interpreted as evidence of illegal rental activity. The letter also included a threat I hadn't expected. If I didn't pay the fines and cease operations within 72 hours, the HOA would not only file a lien, but also report me to the IRS for unreported income and to the city of Scottsdale for operating a business without proper permits and licensing. I called my buddy Marcus, who worked as a real estate attorney in Phoenix. "Man, you need to respond to this in writing immediately," he said after I explained the situation. "Don't let them establish a paper trail where you're not defending yourself. Send a certified letter denying the allegations and demanding they provide actual proof of rental activity, not just visitors. What if they don't back down? Then you might need to lawyer up for real. HOAs can be incredibly vindictive, especially when they think they're right. The problem is fighting them costs money, and they know most people will just pay the fine to make it go away." I spent Monday afternoon crafting a detailed response letter. I explained that I worked from home, listed every person who'd visited with their relationship to me, and demanded the HOA provide actual evidence of rental activity such as Airbnb listings, rental agreements, or payment records. I ended by stating that their accusations were defamatory and requesting an immediate retraction. Tuesday morning, I drove to the HOA management office to deliver my response in person. The office was located in a strip mall between a yoga studio and a tax preparation service. A bored-looking receptionist took my letter and promised to pass it along to Patricia. "She's going to want to meet with you," the receptionist said, not unkindly. "She's very thorough about these things." "I'm happy to meet with her," I said. "I have nothing to hide." The call came that afternoon. Patricia's voice was clipped and professional. "Mr. Mason, I've reviewed your letter. The HOA board has scheduled an emergency hearing for Thursday evening at 7 p.m. You're required to attend to address these violations. Failure to appear will result in automatic judgment against you." "I'll be there," I said. "And just to be clear, I'll be bringing documentation proving I don't operate any kind of rental." "Bring whatever you like," Patricia said. "The evidence speaks for itself." I spent Wednesday gathering every bit of documentation I could find. Bank statements showing no unusual deposits, my work-from-home employment contract, character references from neighbors, even a letter from Emily explaining her regular visits. I felt like I was defending myself against ghost charges, but I wasn't going to give Patricia any room to maneuver. Thursday evening, I arrived at the community center, where the HOA meeting was being held. The room was set up like a miniature courtroom, with a long table at the front where 5 board members sat, Patricia in the center. About 15 other residents were scattered in the audience seats, apparently there to watch the show. "This hearing of the Sagaro Vista HOA board is now in session," Patricia announced, banging a gavel that seemed unnecessarily dramatic. "We're here to address the violations of Mr. Derek Mason regarding illegal short-term rental operations at 4782 Desert Willow Drive. Mr. Mason, you may present your defense." I stood and walked to the front, setting my folder of documents on a small podium. "Thank you for the opportunity to address this. I want to state clearly and unequivocally that I do not operate an Airbnb or any other short-term rental. I have never listed my property on any rental platform. The people you've observed visiting my home are friends and family, which is not prohibited under any HOA regulation." I went through my documentation methodically, explaining each piece of evidence. The board members listened with varying degrees of interest. Patricia maintained an expression of skeptical disapproval throughout. When I finished, Patricia stood and approached her own display board, which I now noticed was covered with photographs. Mr. Mason's explanation sounds reasonable until you examine the pattern of behavior. These photos show 23 different vehicles at his residence over a 3-month period. Multiple visitors arriving with luggage, people who clearly don't live in the neighborhood accessing his property. She pointed to one photo that showed Jake carrying a duffel bag. Here we see a guest arriving with overnight luggage on a Friday evening. He departed Sunday afternoon. That's my friend who was staying over for the weekend to help me install new kitchen cabinets, I interjected. People carry tools in duffel bags. He lives in Flagstaff, and it made sense for him to stay over rather than drive back and forth. Patricia ignored me and continued. The volume and frequency of different visitors indicates commercial activity. Mr. Mason claims to work from home, yet he has an unusual amount of daytime traffic for someone who's supposedly working. I have friends, I said, unable to keep the frustration from my voice. I have family, I have a life. None of that is evidence of running a business. One of the other board members, an older man named George, spoke up. Miss Henderson, do we have any actual evidence of rental listings or transactions? Because what I'm seeing here could legitimately be explained by an active social life. Patricia's jaw tightened. The pattern is clear to anyone willing to see it. We don't need to find the actual listing when the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. But that's exactly what you need, I said. You can't fine someone thousands of dollars based on assumptions. I've brought bank statements showing no rental income. If I were running an Airbnb, where's the money? Cash transactions, Patricia said smoothly. Many people operating illegal rentals deal in cash to avoid paper trails. So your theory is that I'm running a cash-based illegal rental operation, not reporting the income to the IRS, and somehow not leaving any evidence except having friends over. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This is insane. Another board member, a woman named Sandra, raised her hand. I actually think we might be jumping to conclusions here, Mr. Mason has provided reasonable explanations and documentation. Unless we can prove rental activity, I don't think we can assess these fines. Patricia shot Sandra a look that could have melted steel. The rules exist for a reason. Short-term rentals degrade neighborhood quality, increase traffic, and pose security risks. We have a responsibility to investigate suspicious activity. But it's not suspicious, I argued. It's normal life. Do you monitor everyone's visitors like this or just mine? The question hung in the air. Patricia's face flushed. We respond to complaints from concerned residents. What residents? Who complained? That information is confidential. Of course it is, I muttered. George cleared his throat. Miss Henderson, I'm inclined to agree with Sandra. Without concrete evidence of rental activity, I don't think we can proceed with fines. Mr. Mason has a right to have visitors. Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. This board has a duty to enforce our covenants. If we show weakness now, every homeowner will think they can flout the rules. It's not showing weakness to require actual evidence before imposing thousands of dollars in fines, Sandra said firmly. The discussion devolved into a debate among the board members while I stood awkwardly at the podium. Eventually, they called for a vote on whether to uphold the fines. The result was 3 against, 2 in favor. I was off the hook, at least temporarily. Patricia's expression as she dismissed the meeting told me this wasn't over. She approached me as I was gathering my documents. You may have fooled them, Mr. Mason, but I know what you're doing. I'll be watching. Watch all you want, I said, meeting her glare. You'll see exactly what I told you. Normal life. I left the community center feeling relieved but uneasy. The rational part of me knew I'd won, but something about Patricia's certainty bothered me. Why was she so convinced I was running an Airbnb? The answer came 3 days later when I ran into my neighbor Tom while checking my mail. Tom lived 2 doors down, and we'd always had a friendly relationship, mostly consisting of waves and occasional small talk about landscaping. "Hey Derek, glad that HOA thing worked out," Tom said as he retrieved his own mail. "Thanks, it was pretty bizarre." Tom hesitated, then lowered his voice. "You know, Patricia might have gotten you confused with the house on the other side of the neighborhood. I heard someone over on Mesquite Lane is actually running an Airbnb." My stomach dropped. "Mesquite Lane, what number?" "I think 4782, same house number as yours, different street." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You're kidding me." "Yeah, someone mentioned it at the last HOA meeting. There have been complaints about noise and parking over there. Patricia said she was going to investigate." I pulled out my phone and searched Airbnb 4782 Mesquite Lane, Scottsdale, Arizona. Sure enough, a listing popped up. A 3-bedroom ranch house that looked similar to mine, currently available for short-term rental at $150 per night. The host's name was listed as David M. "She got the wrong house," I said, more to myself than Tom. "She confused Desert Willow with Mesquite." Tom winced. "That's rough, man. You should probably tell her," I laughed bitterly. "Oh, I'm definitely going to tell her." I immediately called the HOA office. The receptionist informed me Patricia was out but would return my call. When my phone rang 2 hours later, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I know why you think I'm running an Airbnb," I said. "There's a house at 4782 Mesquite Lane that actually is listed." "Same house number, different street. You got confused." There was a long pause. "That's impossible. I've been monitoring your address specifically." "Pull up the Airbnb listing yourself." 4782 Mesquite Lane. The house actually exists and it's actually being rented out. You've been watching the wrong property this entire time. I could hear typing in the background. More silence. "Then, I see the listing, but that doesn't change the suspicious activity at your residence." "Yes, it does." "It means you were looking for evidence of an Airbnb at my house, because you thought I was the one running it. So you interpreted every normal visitor as proof of your theory." "This is called confirmation bias, Patricia. You saw what you expected to see." "I don't make mistakes like that," Patricia said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. "Apparently you do." "I want a formal written apology from the HOA board, acknowledging the error, and confirming that I'm not in violation of any covenants. And I want assurance that you'll stop monitoring my guests like I'm under surveillance." "The board will discuss it," Patricia said stiffly and hung up. I thought that would be the end of it, but I underestimated Patricia's inability to admit she was wrong. Instead of apologizing, I received another letter a week later. This one claimed that regardless of the confusion about addresses, the HOA still had concerns about the unusual volume of traffic at my residence and would continue monitoring the situation. "She's doubling down," Marcus said when I called him. "Classic ego protection. She can't admit she screwed up, so she's pivoting to a different justification." "Can she legally keep monitoring my house like this?" "It's a gray area. HOAs do have the right to ensure compliance with covenants, but targeted harassment is another thing. If she keeps this up, you might have grounds for a harassment claim." The situation escalated in ways I didn't expect. 2 weeks after the hearing, I got home from a grocery run to find a notice taped to my front door. It was a citation for excessive vehicle traffic and potential commercial activity, signed by Patricia Henderson on behalf of the HOA. I called an emergency meeting with Marcus the next day at a coffee shop in downtown Scottsdale. He reviewed the notice and shook his head. "She's grasping at straws. There's no such violation in your HOA covenants. She's basically making up rules now. So what do I do? You need to file a formal complaint against her with the HOA board. Document everything. Every letter, every interaction, every citation. Build a case that she's harassing you. Will that work? She's the president. Aren't the other board members going to back her up? Not necessarily. You saw at the hearing that some of them were skeptical. If you can show a pattern of unreasonable behavior, they might rein her in. The alternative is to lawyer up and threaten legal action, which will cost money but might be necessary. I spent that evening drafting a detailed complaint. I outlined the entire situation, from the initial false accusation to the continued monitoring, despite the board voting not to uphold the fines. I included copies of every letter, every photograph Patricia had presented, and a timeline showing her escalating behavior. The next morning, I delivered the complaint to the HOA office and requested it be distributed to all board members. The receptionist looked uncomfortable as she accepted it. "This is going to cause problems," she said quietly. "Problems already exist," I replied. "I'm just documenting them." The response came faster than I expected. That afternoon, I received a call from George, the board member who had questioned Patricia's evidence at the hearing. "Mr. Mason, I've received your complaint and I've reviewed it carefully. I want you to know that I find your concerns legitimate. Several board members are troubled by how this situation has been handled. Thank you for saying that. I'm at my wits' end here. We're calling an executive session of the board tomorrow night to discuss Ms. Henderson's conduct. I can't promise anything, but we take these matters seriously." I allowed myself a moment of hope. Maybe reason would prevail after all. The next day dragged by slowly as I tried to focus on work but found myself constantly checking my phone for updates. Around 8 p.m., my phone finally rang. It was Sandra, the other board member who had voted in my favor. "Mr. Mason, I wanted to update you on tonight's meeting. The board has voted to issue a formal reprimand to Patricia for improper enforcement procedures. We've also assigned oversight of your case to me. There will be no further citations or monitoring unless actual evidence of covenant violations emerges." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you so much. This has been a nightmare." I apologize on behalf of the board. Patricia became overzealous in her duties. She's been reminded that HOA enforcement requires concrete evidence, not assumptions. I hung up feeling vindicated. The ordeal was finally over, or so I thought. 2 days later, Emily called me in a panic. "Derek, did you give the HOA permission to contact me?" "No, why?" "I just got a call from some woman named Patricia asking detailed questions about how often I visit you and whether I've ever paid you rent. I told her to back off and hung up, but it was super weird." My blood ran cold. "She's still investigating. She's not letting this go." I immediately called Sandra. "Patricia is now harassing my family members. She called my sister asking invasive questions." "This has to stop," Sandra sighed heavily. "I'll address it. This is getting out of hand." But before Sandra could intervene, the situation took a bizarre turn. The following Monday, I came home to find my trash cans had been inspected. Not just tipped over, someone had gone through my garbage and recycling systematically, spreading it across my driveway. A note was attached to one of the cans, monitoring for evidence of excessive occupancy. I took photographs of everything and called the police. When Officer Rodriguez arrived, he looked at the scene and frowned. "You're saying your HOA president did this?" "I can't prove it was her personally, but yes, I believe so. She's been accusing me of running an illegal Airbnb and won't accept that she's wrong. Going through someone's trash for HOA enforcement is a new one," Officer Rodriguez said, making notes. "Technically, once trash is on the curb, it's considered public domain, but this level of harassment might cross a line. I'd recommend documenting everything and considering a restraining order if it continues." The police report gave me ammunition for another complaint to the HOA board. This time, my letter was more forceful. I demanded Patricia be removed from any involvement with my property and threatened legal action if the harassment didn't cease immediately. George called me the next day. "Mr. Mason, the board is taking this very seriously. We've suspended Patricia's authority to take any enforcement action pending a full review. I want to be transparent with you. There are deeper issues here that we're only now becoming aware of." "What kind of issues?" "Patricia has been involved in similar disputes with other homeowners. There's a pattern of overzealous enforcement and refusing to admit mistakes. The board is considering whether she should continue as president." This was a significant development. "I appreciate you telling me. I just want to live my life without being treated like a criminal." "That's completely reasonable. We'll keep you updated." For about a week, things were quiet. No letters, no calls, no citations. I started to relax and think maybe the nightmare was actually ending. Then I got a call from Marcus. "Derek, you need to check the HOA's public records. Something weird is going on." "What do you mean?" "Someone filed a formal complaint claiming you threatened Patricia Henderson. It's in the minutes from the last board meeting." I felt like the ground had shifted under me. "That's a complete lie. I've never threatened anyone." "I figured, but you need to address it immediately." False accusations like this can be used to paint you as the aggressor and justify actions against you. I requested copies of the meeting minutes and found the claim. According to the notes, Patricia had reported that I'd made threatening statements during a phone call, saying I would make her pay for the false accusations. The problem was, I'd never said anything remotely like that. Our last phone conversation had been the one where I pointed out the Mesquite Lane confusion, and while I'd been frustrated, I'd been professional. This was defamation, and it was documented in official HOA records. I drafted another letter, this one demanding the false accusation be retracted and removed from the record. I included phone records showing the date and time of our actual conversation, and offered to take a polygraph test if necessary. I also formally requested copies of any recordings Patricia might have of me supposedly making threats, knowing full well no such recordings existed. The board scheduled another hearing, this time to address Patricia's claims against me. I showed up with Marcus as my legal representative, which seemed to surprise everyone. "Mr. Mason, we're here to discuss concerns raised by our president regarding your conduct," George began, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Marcus stood before I could respond. "Before we proceed, I need to state for the record that my client vehemently denies making any threats against Miss Henderson. We're prepared to prove these allegations are false. Furthermore, we believe these false accusations constitute defamation and harassment. My client has been subjected to months of unwarranted surveillance, false charges, and now character assassination. This has gone far beyond acceptable HOA enforcement." Patricia sat across the room, her expression rigid. "I know what I heard. Mr. Mason was hostile and threatening." "Then you'll have no problem providing a recording or witnesses to these alleged threats," Marcus said smoothly. "I don't record my phone calls," Patricia snapped. "Convenient. So we're expected to take your word alone that my client made threats, despite the fact that his entire interaction with you has been defensive in nature, because you falsely accused him of running an illegal business." Sandra intervened. "Miss Henderson, can you specify exactly what Mr. Mason said that you interpreted as threatening?" Patricia hesitated. "He said he would hold me accountable for my actions. He said there would be consequences." I jumped in before Marcus could stop me. "I said I wanted a formal apology and that if the harassment continued, I would explore legal options." "That's not a threat, that's someone standing up for their rights." Marcus put a hand on my arm, signaling me to let him handle it. "The board needs to understand what's happening here. Miss Henderson made a mistake. She confused two addresses and launched an investigation into the wrong property. Instead of admitting the error when it was pointed out, she doubled down. She's continued to harass my client, gone through his trash, contacted his family members, and now she's making false accusations to justify her behavior. This is not acceptable conduct for an HOA president. The room was silent. The board members exchanged glances. Finally, George spoke. "Miss Henderson, is it true you contacted Mr. Mason's family members?" "I was conducting a thorough investigation," Patricia said defensively. "After the board specifically assigned oversight of the case to me," Sandra added. "You were told to step back." "The rules apply to everyone," Patricia insisted. "I won't apologize for doing my job." "Your job isn't to harass homeowners based on mistaken assumptions," another board member, a quiet man named Robert, said. It was the first time I'd heard him speak. "I've been reviewing the file. The evidence against Mr. Mason is thin at best. Meanwhile, the actual Airbnb on Mesquite Lane has been operating without any enforcement action at all." Patricia's face turned bright red. "That's a completely separate matter." "Is it? Or did you become so focused on being right about Mr. Mason that you neglected the actual violation you were supposed to be addressing?" The hearing lasted another 30 minutes, with Marcus methodically dismantling each of Patricia's claims. By the end, even Patricia seemed to realize she'd lost the room. The board voted to formally clear me of all accusations and violations. They also voted to remove Patricia from her position as president, effective immediately. Patricia stood abruptly, knocking her chair backward. "This is outrageous. I've served this community for 8 years. I've kept property values stable and enforced the standards that make this neighborhood desirable. And this is how you repay me, by taking the side of someone who's clearly manipulating you." "Patricia, please," George said quietly. "This isn't personal, but your conduct has crossed lines. We have a responsibility to all homeowners, including Mr. Mason." "You're all fools," Patricia said, gathering her things. "This neighborhood will fall apart without proper enforcement. You'll see." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The board members sat in awkward silence. Sandra finally spoke. "Mr. Mason, on behalf of the HOA, I apologize for everything you've been subjected to. We'll be issuing a formal letter clearing your record and confirming you're in good standing with the association." "Thank you," I said, feeling drained. "I appreciate that." Marcus added, "We'd also like written confirmation that there will be no retaliation and that Mr. Mason's privacy will be respected going forward." "Of course," George agreed. "We'll put that in writing." As Marcus and I left the community center, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. "Is it really over?" I asked. "Probably," Marcus said. "Though I wouldn't be surprised if Patricia tries something petty. People like that don't handle losing gracefully." He was right to be cautious. The next morning, I discovered someone had filed a complaint with the city of Scottsdale, claiming I was operating an unpermitted business from my home. The complaint was anonymous, but I had no doubt who was behind it. I called the city's code enforcement office and explained the situation, including the HOA dispute and Patricia's removal as president. The inspector assigned to my case, a woman named Lisa Chen, listened patiently. "So you're not operating any business at all?" she asked. "I work from home as a software developer for a company based in Seattle. I'm an employee, not running a business, and I definitely don't have any rental operation. I'll need to do an inspection, but it sounds like this might be a false complaint. We get those sometimes in HOA disputes." Inspector Chen came by that afternoon. She walked through my house, confirmed I had a home office setup consistent with remote work, and found no evidence of any rental operation or other business activity. "You're clearly in compliance," she said, making notes on her tablet. I'll close this complaint as unfounded. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you've been dealing with this. HOA disputes can get ugly." "You have no idea," I muttered. With the city complaint resolved, I hoped Patricia would finally give up. But 2 weeks later, I received a letter from a law firm representing her. The letter accused me of defamation for statements I'd allegedly made at the board hearing, claiming I'd damaged her reputation and caused her removal as president. She was demanding $10,000 in damages. I immediately forwarded the letter to Marcus. "Is she serious right now?" "Unfortunately, yes. This is a slap suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to intimidate you into silence. The good news is Arizona has anti-slap laws. We can get this dismissed and potentially make her pay your legal fees. How much is this going to cost me? Let me handle the initial response. If it goes beyond that, we'll discuss fees. But honestly, I don't think it will. This lawsuit is baseless, and any competent judge will see that." Marcus filed a motion to dismiss under Arizona's anti-slap statute, arguing that my statements at the HOA hearing were protected speech regarding matters of public concern. He also filed a counterclaim for malicious prosecution and harassment. The case was assigned to Judge Rebecca Walsh in Maricopa County Superior Court. At the hearing on the motion to dismiss, Patricia showed up with her attorney, a tired-looking man who seemed like he'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Walsh read through the filings with increasing skepticism. "Miss Henderson, you're suing Mr. Mason for statements made during an HOA hearing where you were accused of harassment." "He lied about me, Your Honor," Patricia said, ignoring her attorney's attempt to quiet her. "He turned the board against me. Did you or did you not surveil Mr. Mason's residence and accuse him of operating an illegal Airbnb? I was enforcing HOA regulations. Did you continue your investigation after the board told you to stop?" Patricia hesitated. "The board doesn't understand the importance of consistent enforcement." Judge Walsh removed her glasses and fixed Patricia with a stern look. "Miss Henderson, I've reviewed the evidence submitted by both parties. It's clear that you made a mistake about which property was operating a rental, and instead of admitting that mistake, you escalated your actions against Mr. Mason. His statements at the HOA hearing appear to be factual accounts of your behavior. This lawsuit appears to be retaliatory in nature." Patricia's attorney tried to salvage the situation. "Your Honor, if we could have time to amend our complaint." "No," Judge Walsh interrupted. "This case is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, under Arizona's anti-slap statute, I'm ordering Miss Henderson to pay Mr. Mason's reasonable attorney fees. Mr. Garrett, please submit your fee documentation within 14 days. Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. "This is a miscarriage of justice. Miss Henderson, I strongly suggest you accept this ruling and move on. If you continue to harass Mr. Mason, you could face more serious legal consequences." "Do I make myself clear?" "Crystal clear, Your Honor," Patricia's attorney said quickly, physically guiding Patricia toward the exit before she could say anything else. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Marcus grinned at me. "That went better than expected. Judge Walsh doesn't mess around. So it's really over now? It better be. If Patricia contacts you again for anything other than a formal apology, we can pursue a restraining order, and she knows it." The anti-slap fee award came out to $4,500, which Patricia was ordered to pay within 30 days. I never received the money directly. It went to Marcus, but knowing Patricia had to pay for her failed attempt at intimidation felt like justice. Life slowly returned to normal. The HOA elected a new president, a reasonable guy named Tom who lived 3 streets over. He reached out personally to apologize for the situation and assure me that things would be different going forward. "We've actually implemented new policies because of what happened," Tom told me over coffee one morning. No single board member can initiate enforcement actions alone anymore. We need consensus and documentation, and we're requiring training on fair housing laws and proper investigation procedures. That's good to hear. I don't want anyone else to go through what I did. Neither do we. Patricia meant well initially, but she let power go to her head. It's a cautionary tale for all of us. About 6 weeks after Judge Walsh dismissed Patricia's lawsuit, I was in my driveway washing my car when a silver sedan pulled up. A woman I didn't recognize got out and approached hesitantly. "Derek Mason," she asked. "That's me." "I'm Jennifer Larson. I live over on Mesquite Lane, number 4782. It took me a second to place the address. It was the house that actually had the Airbnb listing. "Oh," I said. "Nice to meet you, I guess." Jennifer laughed nervously. "I wanted to apologize. I only recently learned about what happened with you and the HOA. Patricia apparently got our addresses confused and you caught all the heat for my rental. It wasn't your fault. Patricia made the mistake, not you. Still, I feel terrible. The irony is that I stopped doing Airbnb 3 months ago. The hassle wasn't worth it." So Patricia was investigating a rental that didn't even exist anymore while harassing you for something you never did. We talked for a few more minutes. Jennifer seemed genuinely nice and mortified about the situation. Before she left, she offered to write a statement for my records confirming she'd been the one operating the Airbnb, not me. I thanked her but said it wasn't necessary at this point. Spring turned to summer, and the whole ordeal faded into an unpleasant memory. I continued working from home, had friends over whenever I wanted, and didn't give the HOA a second thought beyond paying my quarterly dues. Then in late July, Tom called me with unexpected news. "Derek, I thought you should know, Patricia Henderson has been arrested." "What? For what?" "Apparently she's been harassing multiple people in the neighborhood, not just you. Someone filed for a restraining order after she allegedly broke into their backyard to photograph their pool equipment, claiming it violated architectural guidelines. When the police investigated, they found evidence she'd been trespassing on several properties. She's being charged with criminal trespass and stalking." I sat down heavily. She really couldn't let it go, could she? Her attorney is arguing she has some kind of obsessive-compulsive disorder related to rules and enforcement. But yeah, she went completely off the rails. The woman whose yard she broke into is the wife of a police detective, which probably didn't help Patricia's case. Wow. I mean, I'm not happy she's dealing with legal troubles, but I can't say I'm surprised. The whole board feels awful about not recognizing the warning signs earlier. Your case should have been a red flag that she needed help. After hanging up, I sat in my living room thinking about the past several months. What had started as an absurd case of mistaken identity had spiraled into genuine harassment, a lawsuit, and now criminal charges. Patricia had been so convinced she was right, so committed to her role as neighborhood enforcer, that she destroyed her reputation and possibly her freedom. I pulled out my laptop and did some searching. Patricia's arrest had made the local news. The articles painted a picture of someone who'd become increasingly unhinged about HOA enforcement, alienating neighbors and board members alike. Several people interviewed mentioned that Patricia had been difficult for years, but had gotten worse recently. One quote from a psychologist interviewed for the article stuck with me. Sometimes people become so invested in a role or identity that they can't separate their self-worth from their performance of that role. For someone like an HOA president, who derives their sense of importance from enforcing rules, being wrong can feel like an existential threat. Rather than admit a mistake, they double down, and the behavior escalates. That seemed to describe Patricia perfectly. She'd built her identity around being the guardian of neighborhood standards. When she made a mistake about my property, she couldn't acknowledge it without undermining her entire self-concept. So she'd kept pushing, kept investigating, kept insisting she was right even when all evidence pointed the other way. In a weird way, I felt sorry for her. But I also recognized that her inability to admit she was wrong had caused real harm to multiple people. There had to be consequences for that. Marcus called me a few days later with another update. You might get contacted by the prosecutor's office. They're building a case against Patricia, and your experience might be relevant to establishing a pattern of behavior. Do I have to testify? Not unless they subpoena you, but it might help get justice for everyone she harassed. I agreed to speak with the prosecutor if needed. A week later, an assistant district attorney named Rachel Morrison called me. She asked detailed questions about my interactions with Patricia, the HOA dispute, and the lawsuit. I walked her through the entire timeline. What you're describing fits the pattern we're seeing, Rachel said. Miss Henderson became fixated on perceived violations and couldn't let go even when proven wrong. Your case is actually one of the less severe ones, but it helps establish the obsessive pattern. What's going to happen to her? That depends on several factors. She's been charged with multiple counts of criminal trespass and stalking. If convicted, she could face jail time, though as a first-time offender she'll probably get probation and mandatory counseling. The important thing is stopping the behavior before someone gets hurt. The legal process moved slowly. Patricia's case wound through the court system over the following months. I didn't have to testify. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she eventually accepted a plea deal. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation, ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation and treatment, banned from serving on any HOA board, and required to pay restitution to several victims, including a fine for my legal fees that was separate from the anti-SLAPP award. Through the neighborhood grapevine, I heard that Patricia had moved out of Saguaro Vista entirely. She sold her house and relocated somewhere in California to live with family. I hoped she was getting the help she needed. As fall arrived, I reflected on everything that had happened. A simple case of mistaken identity had transformed into months of conflict, stress, and ultimately a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked authority and the inability to admit mistakes. I'd learned a lot about HOA law, my own rights as a homeowner, and the importance of documenting everything. I'd also gained a new appreciation for my home and my freedom to live my life without constant surveillance. The whole experience had been exhausting and infuriating, but I'd stood my ground and ultimately prevailed. Patricia had been so certain I was guilty of something that she'd seen evidence where none existed, and when confronted with her error, she'd chosen escalation over acknowledgement. The neighborhood had changed too. The new HOA board was more transparent and careful about enforcement. They'd implemented policies requiring multiple sources of evidence before bringing violations, created an appeal process that included neutral third parties, and established term limits to prevent any one person from becoming too entrenched in power. Tom told me at a community barbecue in October that my case had actually been beneficial in the long run. It exposed problems in how we were operating. Nobody wanted to admit it, but Patricia had been overstepping for years. We just went along with it because she seemed so confident and we didn't want the hassle of pushing back. Your situation forced us to confront that. I'm glad something good came out of it, I said, though I could have done without the experience. Fair enough. How about free HOA dues for a year as an apology? I laughed. I'll take it. My sister Emily visited for Thanksgiving that year. As we sat in my living room after dinner, she brought up the whole ordeal. Looking back, it's almost funny. The HOA president convinced you were running an Airbnb when you weren't, all because she wrote down the wrong address. It wasn't funny at the time, I said. But yeah, there's dark humor in how absurd it all was. She was so sure she created this whole narrative based on completely normal behavior. Do you think she actually believed you were guilty? Or was it about ego? I considered the question. Both, probably. I think she genuinely convinced herself I was running a rental, and then when evidence suggested otherwise, her ego wouldn't let her back down. Each time someone questioned her, she dug in deeper. It became about being right rather than discovering the truth. That's kind of terrifying when you think about it. How many other situations in life work that way? Someone in authority makes a mistake but can't admit it, so innocent people suffer. More than we'd like to think, I agreed. As winter approached and 2025 gave way to 2026, the whole situation faded into the past. I continued my work-from-home routine, had friends and family visit without worrying about surveillance, and generally enjoyed my life. The HOA sent me updates about neighborhood matters, but they were routine and reasonable. I occasionally thought about Patricia and wondered how she was doing. Despite everything, I didn't hate her. She'd caused me significant stress and expense, but I understood that she'd been driven by her own demons, an excessive need for control, an inability to admit mistakes, and an identity too wrapped up in a single role. The whole experience had taught me several valuable lessons. First, document everything. If I hadn't kept meticulous records of every interaction, every letter, and every citation, fighting back would have been much harder. Second, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself even when facing someone in authority. Patricia had counted on me being intimidated or willing to pay the fines just to make the problem go away. By refusing to back down, I'd not only cleared my name but potentially saved other homeowners from similar harassment. Third, mistakes compound when pride prevents acknowledgement. If Patricia had simply said, "I'm sorry, I confused your address with another property when I first pointed out the Mesquite Lane listing," none of the subsequent drama would have occurred. Her inability to utter those words had cost her job, her reputation, and ultimately her freedom. And finally, I'd learned that community associations need checks and balances just like any other organization with power over people's lives. The old board had given Patricia too much unilateral authority and hadn't questioned her judgment. The new policies requiring consensus and documentation weren't red tape, they were necessary protections against abuse of power. By early 2026, life in Seguero Vista had fully stabilized. The neighborhood hummed along peacefully under Tom's leadership. Property values remained steady. The actual problems that HOAs are meant to address, maintenance issues, aesthetic concerns, shared resource management, were handled efficiently and fairly. I ran into Jennifer from Mesquite Lane occasionally at the neighborhood pool or community events. We'd become friendly, bonded by our shared connection to the Patricia saga. She'd started a new job and seemed happy to be done with the Airbnb experiment. "You know what's wild?" Jennifer said to me one afternoon at the pool. "Patricia never actually contacted me about the rental. She was so focused on you that she never investigated the property that was actually violating the rules. That's because she was convinced she was right about me. Once she decided I was guilty, every piece of information got filtered through that assumption. Classic confirmation bias. It's like a lesson in critical thinking gone wrong." Exactly. As spring of 2026 arrived, I found myself in a good place. The nightmare with Patricia and the HOA had ended, I'd been vindicated, and my life had returned to comfortable normalcy. I'd even started dating someone I met through work, and she found the whole HOA story both horrifying and entertaining. "You're telling me this woman went through your trash because she thought you were renting your house on Airbnb?" Meyer asked, laughing. "That's insane." It got worse before it got better, I said. But yeah, it was pretty absurd. And it was all because she mixed up addresses. Yep, 4782 Desert Willow Drive versus 4782 Mesquite Lane. One simple mistake that she refused to acknowledge, and it spiraled from there. Well, I'm glad you fought back. A lot of people would have just paid the fine to avoid the hassle. I thought about it, but it wasn't really about the money, it was about the principle. I hadn't done anything wrong, and I wasn't going to accept punishment for something I didn't do. Maya smiled. That's one of the things I like about you. You stand up for yourself. Looking back on the whole experience now, months after it ended, I could see it more clearly. What had felt like a personal attack at the time was really just one person's inability to cope with being wrong. Patricia had built her identity around being the vigilant protector of neighborhood standards, and when that identity was threatened by evidence of her mistake, she'd chosen to attack reality rather than adjust her self-perception. The collateral damage, my stress, my time, my legal fees, the other homeowners she'd harassed, didn't register for her because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging she'd been wrong. And for someone like Patricia, being wrong was intolerable. In the end, the system had worked, albeit slowly and with significant hassle. The HOA board had ultimately held Patricia accountable. The courts had dismissed her baseless lawsuit and made her pay for it. The criminal justice system had addressed her escalating behavior. And the neighborhood had implemented reforms to prevent similar abuses in the future. I was left with a good story, a deeper understanding of my legal rights, and a healthy skepticism of unchecked authority. Not the worst outcome, all things considered. 1 year after Patricia's initial accusation, I was sitting on my back patio on a warm April evening, beer in hand, watching the sunset paint the Arizona sky in shades of orange and purple. My friend Jake was visiting, the same Jake whose duffel bag of tools Patricia had photographed as evidence of Airbnb guests with luggage. "Remember when your HOA president lost her mind and accused you of running an Airbnb?" Jake asked, echoing my thoughts. How could I forget? You and your suspicious duffel bag of cabinet installation tools were key evidence against me, Jake laughed. I still can't believe she actually went through your trash. That's some next-level crazy. The whole thing was surreal. I kept thinking I'd wake up and it would have been a weird dream. But you beat her in the end. I did. Though it would have been easier if she'd just admitted she got the wrong address in the first place. People like that can't admit mistakes. It's like a psychological impossibility for them. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking our beers and enjoying the evening. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily asking if she could visit next weekend. I texted back that she was always welcome, not worrying for even a second that someone might photograph her car and interpret it as evidence of illegal activity. That freedom, the freedom to live my life without surveillance, to have guests without suspicion, to exist in my own home without someone constantly looking for evidence of wrongdoing, was the real victory. Patricia had tried to take that away, and I'd fought to keep it. As darkness fell and Jake headed home, I stood in my driveway and looked at my house. It was just a modest ranch house in a suburban Arizona neighborhood, nothing special or remarkable. But it was mine, and I defended it. Not from some dramatic threat, but from the mundane tyranny of someone with a little power and zero accountability. The porch light flickered on automatically, its sensor detecting the darkness. I smiled, thinking about how that sensor had probably been photographed by Patricia as more evidence of commercial activity, lights turning on and off at odd hours, clearly indicating different guests coming and going. Inside, I settled onto my couch with my laptop to finish some work. The house was quiet, comfortable, mine. No citations taped to my door. No angry HOA presidents demanding non-existent rental income. No lawyers sending threatening letters. Just normal life, which turned out to be exactly what I'd been fighting for all along. The whole ordeal with Patricia and the HOA had been one of the strangest experiences of my life. Being punished for something I didn't do. Watching someone double down on being wrong rather than admit a simple mistake, and ultimately having to prove a negative in what felt like a Kafka novel set in suburban Arizona. But it was over now, truly over. Patricia was gone, the HOA had reformed, and I was free to live my life. Sometimes the best endings aren't dramatic or climactic, they're just a return to peaceful normalcy. And after everything I'd been through, peaceful normalcy felt like the greatest gift imaginable. I closed my laptop and headed to bed, already looking forward to Emily's visit next weekend. She could park her silver Honda Civic in my driveway without anyone documenting it as evidence of criminal activity. We could order pizza without someone interpreting the delivery car as proof of commercial operations. We could simply be a brother and sister spending time together, which was exactly what it had always been. In the end, that was what Patricia had never understood. Not everything is suspicious. Not every pattern indicates wrongdoing. Sometimes people just live their lives, have friends over, receive guests, and exist in their homes without any ulterior motive or hidden agenda. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one, a principle Patricia would have done well to remember before she confused Desert Willow Drive with Mesquite Lane and set off a chain of events that ultimately destroyed her position and reputation. As I drifted off to sleep that night, my last thought was a simple one. I was home, I was safe, and I was free from the absurd tyranny of someone else's mistake. That was enough.